Now that we have gotten all 5 of the golden leaves, we have to do quite a bit of backtracking to get back to Richard's villa. We'll have to go through Canalit Castle again to get down to the first floor, but since we stepped on the switch at the bottom right corner of this screen, this will open up the gate in front of the castle, so we won't have to backtrack through that secret passage that we originally had to go through. We have to make our way back to Richard at Richard's villa. And one thing that's pretty interesting about Richard, he was actually known as King Richard in another Game Boy game that was only released in Japan, known as Keru no Tame ni Kana wa Naru. Yeah, it's a mouthful, but it was a game that a lot of the aspects of Link's Awakening was actually based around. So it's like another one of those references, those odes. And in that game it translates to "For the frog the bell tolls." So that is why there are frogs in Richard's house. Anyway, so now with Richard out of the way, you can push the little thing away, and this will reveal a staircase. Head down the staircase, and along the left path, push the rock into the hole, jump on over with Rock's Feather, and open the treasure chest here to get another secret seashell. This makes your 12th secret seashell in total. Head back down and now head up through the right passage and head up the stairs. Head to the left and exit the cave, and now we are in the actual villa part. It's basically like a maze, and if you see at the edges of the screen there are like pieces of grass, while the rest of the screen is just bushes. The piece of grass signifies that that is actually the pathway. A lot of the bushes I'm hitting, because I already have the path pretty memorized, the other bushes would make for holes. At the end here it says, "In soil sleep secrets beneath your soles," and your soles is basically your shoes. So dig under right here and you get the slime key, and the slime key will allow us to gain access to the next dungeon, Key Cavern. We have to backtrack through the villa exactly like we did the first time around, and it's worth noting there are different routes that you could take, but they will all lead to dead ends. This is actually the only proper route you can take to get to the key. So backtrack through the cave that is, I suppose, like underneath Richard's house, and then we can finally make our way over to the entrance to the next dungeon, Key Cavern. Once you exit Richard's house, you'll have to go to the left, even though the dungeon is to the right. It's a bit strange. Head up here, head left, and then up the stairs, and then we can use the slime key right here, and this will open up the entrance to the cave, to the next dungeon. However, we can't actually enter it from here, so we'll have to do some navigating around, head back around Richard's villa to get to the right side of the dungeon. Just head up 2 screens and make sure Rock's Feather is equipped, and then we can jump across the little like holes in the water. Not really holes in the water, we can jump across the water itself and jump to the left, head left a screen. Before entering, we want to climb up the steps here and move to the left. There's a couple winged Octoroks. You can get rid of them, but as the ground looks, you can see there's like one square that's like highlighted because it's surrounded by grass. So naturally there's going to be a secret here. So dig up your 13th secret seashell. Now head down a screen, head left a screen, and enter the 3rd dungeon, Key Cavern. Key Cavern. I personally find it to be easier than Balagrato. The bosses are easier, and there aren't too many new enemies. One of the new enemies is right here in this screen, and it's in the form of a red bombite. Once you slash at these things with your sword, they basically ricochet against the walls, and they'll eventually explode. You can use your shield to deflect them if they're like coming at you. Once all the enemies have been defeated, grab the key from the treasure chest and head up a screen. The treasure chest here is a fake. You can open it, you don't need to. And just head north. On the right side of this screen, it looks like there's a spot where you can get a treasure chest or something. There actually is, and we will be getting that much later in the dungeon. There's also a treasure chest on the left side here, but because the blocks are risen, we can't actually access it. In this room there are 4 different ways you can go, and if you go through the bottom, left, or top, you'll use a small key, but you'll get one by defeating all the enemies in the room, so you can go through all 3 of them. You don't need to go through any of them though, it's completely optional. If you go through the one above, there is a blue orb here. If you hit it, it changes the block, so now you can actually access this treasure chest that gets the stone beak. And again, this is completely optional, and I actually forgot to go back to the floor below and access the room that had the owl statue. If you do though, the owl statue says, "Far away, do not fear, dash and fly." And this gives you some advice on what you have to do later in the game, where you will need to dash and fly, and I'll mention that again later on when we get to that point. On this screen, I passed the screen earlier in the dungeon because the blocks were risen and I couldn't get the dungeon map. But now that the blocks were lowered, I could get it. Now we want to backtrack to this room that had the 4 entrances here. Now the rooms on the bottom and the rooms on the left, there is really no reason whatsoever to even bother to go through them. There is nothing of interest actually. All you do is you go into the rooms and you have to defeat the enemies to get a small key, and then you leave. There really is nothing of interest here. I think it's one thing that's interesting though. The room to the right, that's where you're going to have to go to progress further in the dungeon. If you use the key on the right, you don't get a key back though. So you can't actually access the other 3 ones unless you get another key. And at the very end of the dungeon, you actually get another key, an extra key. You can actually complete this dungeon with an extra key. And the whole purpose is, if you use that key elsewhere, you can come back to this exact room and go through these other 3 rooms if you really like to. Kind of weird, but I always wondered, like, why do I have this extra key? But that is the reasoning. Anyway, head to the screen here, and we want to head through the staircase. Defeat all of the green Zol in this room, and a small key will appear on the blue block. There's 1 Zol at the bottom right hiding over here, so make sure you get them all, and then grab the small key. Head up a screen, and at the bottom right portion of the screen there is a couple pots, and in the corner there are some bombs, and we actually just got some bombs in one of the previous rooms as well. This hints to you that bombs are going to be a necessity very shortly actually. In this room there are these parrots, and I fought these just a moment ago, and they're basically these birds that when you get close to them they'll disappear and then reappear at another part of the screen. They can be quite annoying, but once you defeat all the enemies in this room, a small key will appear. Pick it up and then head north through the one-way door. Kill all the enemies and a treasure chest appears on the higher ledge, and then just head through the one-way door. You'll notice that it's like a reoccurring theme in this dungeon. Just based on the name of the dungeon, Key Cavern, there are so many keys. It's pretty cool. To defeat the black monster with the hard shell, feed him something explosive. And this is some advice on the mini-boss, which we are soon gonna fight. Head up the steps, and if you head to the right, you'll notice there's a crack in the wall on the right. But in this room, there is no crack on the wall. And the whole purpose of this higher ledge is to show you that there is this secret that we will need to go through. Open the treasure chest here to get 50 rupees, which is good, saving up for the bow and arrow. And now we want to head back to this room. Push the block, and then head up a screen to face off with the dungeon mini-boss, the Dodongo Snakes. These are basically a play off the Dodongos from the original Legend of Zelda, where you have to feed them bombs basically for them to explode, and it takes 3 bombs each to defeat them. And all you really need to do is just follow where they're, like, you want to just literally go and place a bomb either in their mouth directly or in their path so that their mouth will gobble it up. Once all 3 are defeated, you can head right a screen and you can open the treasure chest to get the dungeon item, the Pegasus Boots. And I'll show you how to use them in the next section where we will complete this chapter. Join me for that.